This is a bodyweight hip thrust to train those glutes. If you're brand new to strength training, this is one of the best places to start. A bodyweight hip thrust primarily emphasizes your glute max. This is the largest muscle in your glutes and the main driver of hip extension. A glute bias means that we're putting a majority of the tension on your glutes, but it doesn't mean that we're turning off all those other leg muscles. You're still going to use your hamstrings, your adductors, a little bit of the quad, and your core to stabilize your pelvis and control through the movement. Those are all still on, but this setup and execution, it shifts the majority of your work to your glutes, so they're doing most of the work. When it comes to hip thrusts, there's two common methods. One is a hinged-based method where you're hinging from the hips, similar to an RDL, and the other is a scooped-based method where you're tucking and rolling your pelvis. And in my experience coaching beginners, the hinge method is just far more consistent and it tends to reduce lower back pain. So that is a version that we are focusing on in this video, the hinge method. To get all set up, there are two different ways you can get into position. Option A, you can sit on the box or bench or whatever you're using and lower yourself down. Or option B, you can sit on the ground and kind of like hike yourself up. I personally like option A. Once you've got yourself supported by your bench or your box or whatever you're using, you want your back to be placed onto that bench so that the edge of the bench is sitting around the mid shoulder blade area, roughly where your sports bra sits. Your triceps should be supporting yourself on the bench with your hands just resting close to or on your hips. In the future, you're going to be holding a dumbbell there, but for now, we're just keeping it easy and body weight. Then adjust your feet so that when your hips are at that top position, your shins are vertical and your knees are stacked directly over your ankles. This is going to create that nice 90-degree bend in your knees. And at the top of the movement, we want that nice tabletop where your shins are close to vertical, your knee has that 90-degree bend, and you have a straight line from your knee to your hip to your shoulder. Now, if your feet are too close, your knees are going to bend too much and you're going to feel more quads. But if your feet are too far away, you're going to feel a lot more hamstring tension. You want to adjust your feet so that your knee is right above your ankle from that side view. Then you want to have your feet placed about hip width apart with your toes pointing forward. At the very top, keep that chin nice and tucked. We want to avoid a hyperextended back where our chest is really far up. So we want to engage your core, push those ribs down, and get that pelvis just slightly tucked underneath. That core engagement and that rib push down is so important. So before you even start to move, really think about engaging that core, stacking your torso, and that way we're not getting that lower back pain that is really common to feel in hip thrust for beginners. Now for our execution from that top position, what you're going to want to do is just let those hips lower toward the floor, slowly under control. You're just going to let those hips sink down toward the ground. It's going to stretch your glutes, and you want to allow your body, your chest, your torso, and your eyes all to follow as those hips start to move down towards the ground. You really just want your body to move as one piece from that top of your head to your shoulder to your hip. So as your butt comes down towards the ground, your chest and your head should also move forward like it's one plank of wood pivoting on the bench. As those hips are coming down, you should feel a stretch through your glutes at the bottom, and your core at that bottom should still be on, nice and engaged. Now from this bottom position, to get back up to the top, you want to press your whole foot from heel to toe to pinky toe through the ground. Drive those hips straight up think about squeezing your glutes. That is the biggest part, is you're going to squeeze your glutes to drive those hips up to that top position. As you do that, your body should move as one unit from your shoulder to your knees. At the top, your knees, hips, and shoulders should be in a straight line, that nice tabletop position. Pause briefly at the top for 1 to 2 seconds, really thinking about squeezing your glutes. And then you're just going to lower back down slowly and repeat. We want a nice, slow, controlled tempo as we go down, and then a strong squeeze of the glutes. Contract those glutes to drive the hips up on that way up. And like I said, you want to think about moving your hips toward the ceiling by squeezing your glutes, not arching your lower back. We want to make sure that we're not just overarching our lower back at the top. The goal isn't to get as high as possible, but to contract the glute as much as possible to get that straight line from shoulder to hip to knee at the top. This is called full hip extension, and this is where we want each rep to end. And make sure to keep that core nice and engaged through all your reps. If you feel this in your lower back, you need to reset the ribs, get that core engaged, get that pelvis reset. Brace your core again and focus on driving through the glutes rather than thrusting your chest upward. Let's go over some common mistakes and how to fix them. One common mistake is just overextending your lower back at the top. So if your ribs flare up and your chest lifts excessively at the top, your lower back is going to feel more engagement. So we want to fix this by keeping your chin tucked, that rib pushed down, and think about squeezing your glutes to drive the rep up and stopping once you get that straight line from shoulder to hip to knee. Another mistake is just incorrect foot placement. Like I said, if they're too close or too far away, you're not going to feel your glutes very well. So just adjust your stance so that your knees are stacked over your ankles at the top, creating that nice 90-degree angle. A third mistake is letting those knees cave inward. So we want to keep your knees in track and in line with your toes and your hip throughout the movement. So if they're falling in towards the movement, then just think about slightly pushing your knees outward to keep those hips a little bit more stable. And lastly, a super common mistake that costs you glute growth is just rushing through your reps. This is a control exercise for most beginners. We really want to focus on moving slowly through that eccentric stretch as we go down. We want to get a strong contraction from the glutes to drive the hips up. We want to squeeze at the top for 1 or 2 seconds and really focus on feeling your glutes work. We will add more weight and more load as you get stronger, but right now, getting that form down is the most important. Quality definitely matters more than quantity or rep speed here.